What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one, I'm going to go over a couple players at each position that I think are worth looking at ahead of waivers in Week 10. We're 9 weeks through the season. We're sort of getting to the point where you guys know where your teams stand and really know what you guys need. I think there's still plenty of time for us to make sure that we make our rosters better come the playoffs. It's been always a wild ride every single year, and generally this is the time of year that there's going to be those one or two guys you can pick up off waivers that end up being league winners. Last year we had guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Plenty of handcuffs will end up popping up as well. You'll have injuries as the season goes on, and those are the kinds of moves that can win you your league. So it's important to make sure we stay active, make sure we keep making sure our teams get better every single week, and that's how the most active managers and the best fantasy managers end up winning the most championships. So waivers is one of the best ways to make your teams better. That and trading tend to be the best ways to do it, and super fun. So with that, let's get into the quarterback position. So starting us off with the quarterback position, we've got a pretty obvious ad if he's available. It's going to be Justin Fields. He's probably been added. He was really hot streamer last week. He was my start of the week quarterback position. I think he was my number one waiver ad as well. But if he's still available, you got to add him. He was the QB1 over the last week. I think he's the quarterback one over the last month. He's just offering so much on the ground with his rushing upside. This offense looks a whole lot better than it did to start the year. They just got Chase Claypool, so they're going to be taking a step forward as he gets integrated as well. So this is a Bears offense that's actually surprisingly good. Justin Fields looks great, and he's honestly probably a top 8 quarterback the rest of the season. And if you're hurting at quarterback, or even if you're not, you just got to roster Fields. Marcus Mariota, again, he's another guy you could look to play. He's just gives you that high rushing floor. This offense is surprisingly okay. They face a really gross Panthers defense this week on Thursday, and we saw how high scoring that matchup was last time they met 2 weeks ago. So Mariota could be a bye week fill in for you this week. Jared Goff's another guy. He's always available there. He's on a team with a really crappy defense and a decent offense. So Jared Goff can be a streamer pretty much any single week. And then Trevor Lawrence is another guy. This offense is really hot and cold. I have a hard time really reading the Jaguars team, but Trevor Lawrence, he offers a little bit on the ground. They're a decent passing offense. So again, he's a decent streamer whenever you need him as well. Moving on to the running back position, my number one ad this week would be Jeff Wilson. He surprisingly got just as many carries this week as Raheem Mostert. He actually looked a little bit better than Mostert did as well, and this was his first week on the Dolphins, so I wouldn't be entirely shocked to see Jeff Wilson actually take over this backfield a little bit. I think he is a bit more durable. He's more built to handle the kind of workload they've been giving Mostert, so I think they do want to take some of that workload off of Mostert. I think Jeff Wilson's going to be a guy that's like going to be a low-end running back too, pretty much the rest of the year, so if he's sitting on waivers for you, I think you got to go add him. He's going to be a guy that you can start whenever you're in a pinch. Isaiah Pacheco is another guy you could add. Jerick McKinnon's on here as well. They've really been phasing Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of this Chiefs offense. Isaiah Pacheco seems to be getting most of the between the 20s work, although Jerick McKinnon had 62% of the snaps this last week. He's clearly the guy they want to use when they're throwing the ball. So I think it's going to be really hard to really trust any Chiefs running back, to be completely honest. But if an injury were to happen to either of those two or CEH, I think it would really clear things up. So I think all of the Chiefs running backs have to be owned, although I don't think I'm comfortable starting any of them going forward. Gus Edwards and Kenyon Drake are both ads for me as well. Gus Edwards might have been dropped this week after he was declared inactive, and now the Ravens are heading into their bye, so I think a lot of people might be unwilling to hold him through that. And same thing with Kenyon Drake. He was actually really great this week on Monday. He looked really talented. It's kind of weird, but I think he is a really quality runner so far for them. Dobbins, we don't know when Dobbins is going to come back, so I think Kenyon Drake and Gus Edwards need to be owned in pretty much all leagues. I think those two will pretty much split carries once they're out of the bye, and then we'll see how long it takes for Dobbins to come back. But both these guys are guys you could play as like low-end running back twos with Dobbins out, so they need to be rostered. Rashad White is another guy I think needs to be rostered. He just looks like a better running back than Leonard Fournette right now. This is a Tampa Bay offense that's just looking for people that can make plays, and I think Rashad White is one of them. He's a really capable pass catcher. He's explosive with the ball in his hands, and if anything were to happen to Fournette, he could be one of those guys that ends up winning your league. Isaiah Spiller is another guy I want to keep an eye on. I really liked him before the season started. He's really struggled to get on the field for the Chargers, but he did finally find his way on the field. I know that could be linked to Joshua Kelly being injured, and they don't really like Sony Michel, but I think there's a real chance that Isaiah Spiller is the handcuff to Austin Eckler if Austin Eckler were to go down. So he's a guy that I wouldn't hate rostering, especially if you own Eckler and just want to get some insurance there. Chase Edmonds is another guy that I think you can add. He was recently traded from the Dolphins to the Broncos in that Bradley Chubb trade. So, I mean, the Broncos are hurting their running back. There's a reason they were willing to take on him in his salary. So I wouldn't be completely shocked to see them use him. He'll probably just take on that Mike Boone role. He'll be their pass catching back and maybe get a couple carries here and there. But, I mean, this Broncos defense could be a little bit worse at losing Chubb. They're coming out of their bye. Maybe they look better. So Chase Edmonds could be worth a speculative ad. And then Zach Moss is another guy you could be looking to add. He was traded from the Bills to the Colts in the Naheem Hines trade. So he could slot in. He's probably their number 3 running back right now. I know he wasn't active this last week, but it was his first week on the new team. I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be dealing with his ankle injury a lot of the year. Deion Jackson seemed to bang up his knee a little bit this last week as well. So it's not impossible that Zach Moss gets forced into action here. And I think he is the best of their running backs behind Jackson and Taylor. So Zach Moss is like a really deep league speculative ad, but he does have potential upside if those two guys weren't able to suit up. So if you're in a really deep league, I think you could look at him. Moving on to wide receiver here, there's a lot of guys that I want to touch on, so I'll kind of try and fly through it here. Joshua Palmer and Rondale Moore would be priority ads for me if they are still available. I think they're both really involved in their offenses. They're both pretty good players. Joshua Palmer is going to be the number one wide receiver for the Chargers as long as Keenan and Mike Williams are out. I don't know when either of those two guys are going to be back, so I think Joshua Palmer is going to be a must start. And even when one of them is back, he's still going to be the number two. It's a good offense. So you got to play Palmer pretty much every single week right now, I think. And then Rondale Moore, he seems to be the clear number two target in this offense now that they're finally using him in the slot. I like Moore a lot as a player. I think he'd be a nice ad and the guy you can play in the flex whenever you need him. Then Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman, they're both Chiefs wide receivers that I think have potential to go up going forward. Mecole Hardman has just looked really good over the last 2 weeks, so it's hard to ignore 4 touchdowns in 2 games. And Kadarius Toney, I think he just wasn't quite integrated into this offense yet. He'd be a speculative ad that I'd wait to see. I wouldn't want to play him until I see him have a really good game, but Kadarius Toney is a guy that I think is really talented and could blow up at any minute. So I want to roster Kadarius Toney in any league I don't need to start this week. And then next we got Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's just looked really good for the Cleveland Browns. They're past their bye now, so Peoples-Jones could be a nice lower-end flex play for you the rest of the year. And, I mean, he's always got upside. He's a really quality deep threat, so Peoples-Jones should be rostered in most leagues. OBJ, it's getting to that time of year. It sounds like it could be cleared for football activity this time next week. So, I mean, he will sign with the team at some point. He'll probably be fantasy relevant when that does happen, so if you want to shoot your shot, if you don't need a starter yet, I would think OBJ should probably start being rostered in a lot of leagues. Michael Gallup's another guy. He is the number 2 wide receiver for the Cowboys. Maybe they really take a step forward now that they're through their bye, and Dak's probably fully healthy at this point. So Gallup should get rostered. I still don't think I want to start him until I see him perform a little bit better. Terrace Marshall is another guy that I think is interesting. He had a touchdown last week. He's clearly on the field a ton for the Panthers. I know the Panthers suck, and it's really hard to trust any of them, but he actually saw just as many targets as DJ Moore after Baker Mayfield came into the game this last week. So we'll see who the starter is on Thursday, but this is a beatable Falcons defense, and Terrace Marshall's on the field a ton. So Terrace Marshall could be like a desperation flex play if you need him. And Zay Jones, he's on the field a ton for the Jaguars. He's on pace for like 115 targets so far this season. It just hasn't really come up with anything that meaningful from a fantasy perspective. But if you need a guy that's just going to get you some points, and obviously he's got upside with the amount of volume he's getting, I think Zay Jones could be a nice deep league ad. Randall Cobb, I know he's really gross. He's hurt, he's old, but the Packers just lost Romeo Doubs for 4 to 6 weeks. We saw Christian Watson deal with what was probably a concussion this last week, so I don't want to follow up on that, but I believe Christian Watson did leave the game with concussion. So that pretty much leaves Sammy Watkins, Allen Lazard, and Randall Cobb to be the only receivers in this offense, probably coming down the stretch because Watson had a concussion just 2 weeks ago as well, so I'd expect him to miss some extended time here. So Randall Cobb really could slot in as like the number 2 receiving option in this offense. I get it. The Packers are 3-6. They look really bad. They really don't know which way is up on offense right now, and they may have just lost Aaron Jones for a little bit. But there's going to be a lot of opportunity in this offense. They'll still move the ball a little bit. So Randall Cobb could be a really deep league flex play if you need him. Then DeMarcus Robinson, he didn't do much this week, but he was dealing with an illness. I wouldn't be shocked to see him really be the number 2 wide receiver in this offense with Bateman out the rest of the year. So he'd be worth an ad just to see what happens. I know you'd have to hold him through the bye, so that does suck. And I get not wanting to roster him. He's just a really deep league speculative ad if you want to. Last, we got the tight end position. My number 1 ad this week would be Greg Dulcich. I believe I told you guys to add him last week. He's just looked really good through the first 2 starts of his career for the Broncos. He's now through his bye, so I think he's going to be a guy that you can pretty much just start every single week if you've been hurting at tight end. It really seems like he's the number 2, at worst, the number 3 option in this Broncos offense. He's a talented player. I do think this Broncos offense is going to take a step forward the second half of the season. They won't be elite. I don't think that'll happen, but I think they'll be a fringe top 15 offense, and that's going to be a hell of a lot better than it's been so far. So Dulcich is going to be a guy that I think you can start pretty much any week. Cole Kmet, he's finally finding the end zone. This Bears offense looks a lot better. Cole Kmet's an integral part of that, so I think he's a guy that you could add. And then Cade Otton, he's a rookie playing for Tampa Bay. He's getting a lot of targets. He had, I think it was 5 for 66 and a touchdown this last week. So Cade Otton's involved in an offense that's led by Tom Brady. You know, Tom Brady has obviously fed the tight ends in his past, so I think Cade Otton's a guy you could add and play if you're desperate at tight end as well. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.